While you're getting ready to make your lemon pound cake, you want to be sure to preheat your oven to 350 degrees and set the rack in the middle of the oven. So today I'm going to make lemon pound cake, and I actually make my pound cake sometimes in a bundt pan, sometimes in a loaf pan. Today I'm going to use the bundt pan. It just takes a little bit longer to bake, but it's kind of pretty that way. So you're going to need to start with a bowl, and I've kind of measured out my things this time. I mean, I've put them in separate bowls so you can kind of see what the proportions are like as we put them in the bowl. So the first thing you're going to do is get 3 eggs in there, and I always love farm fresh eggs if you can get those. I happen to be at a local market today, so I got the farm fresh eggs, and we're going to add just 3 eggs. And I like to actually beat my eggs with a fork. Those yolks are really nice and rich and orange, which is a sign of a really healthy chicken. So we're just going to beat up those eggs. I need to figure out a way to get an overhead camera because that would probably be easier for you to see. But we're just going to go ahead and beat up those eggs until they look about like this. So once your eggs are beaten, you're going to add the sugar. And this looks like about a cup of sugar, give or take. And you're going to just kind of beat that in also with your fork till it's combined. In this bowl we have sour cream, and I use just a half a pint, which is also a cup of sour cream. I really like my pound cake to be creamy and moist. If you don't use something like a sour cream, you're going to get kind of a dry pound cake. So this is what it looks like at this stage. So you're just going to go ahead and keep kind of whisking with your fork until that sour cream is combined with those 3 eggs and that sugar. So equal parts of sugar and sour cream. And your mixture should be nice and kind of goopy like that. Now to that, we're just going to add some oil. This is about a half a cup or so of avocado oil. You can use vegetable oil or canola oil, or just, you know, any olive oil would probably be a little bit too olivey, like too much of a taste. But use something that kind of is going to go well with your lemon loaf, some type of oil. So we're just going to keep kind of whisking until it's really nice and combined. Now, I'm going to add the lemon zest. This is actually, I just dropped my fork in the bowl. Actually, the zest of the 3 lemons. So I use 3 lemons for the zest and for the juice. We may or may not use all of the juice. This is actually lemon extract. Now you're going to want to use quite a bit of lemon extract because I like my lemon pound cake to be really lemony, and you need to use a lot of lemon extract for that because a basic pound cake, you know, is just buttery, which is great, and creamy, but like a lemon pound cake, you really want that flavor. And lemon extract is kind of more of a mild extract, so a little bit of it doesn't really go a long way. It'll kind of just blend into the rest of your flavors. So lots of lemon zest, lots of lemon extract, and it should be at about that kind of a consistency at this step. Then you're going to add your baking powder in and just kind of stir that around. this is about 2 teaspoons or so of baking powder, and then about a quarter of a teaspoon, a third of a teaspoon, something of salt, and then I can't remember how much flour. Maybe like a cup and a half or a cup and 2/3. So you're gonna just then combine the flour with that. What I like to do is make sure that the baking powder is combined first, because then it's evenly distributed throughout the batter. And when you add your flour and salt, it just kind of, you don't have to over stir it. So you don't want to like over stir a pound cake. You want it to be a little bit lumpy. And I'll show you how it looks at this stage. So let's just review the ingredients: the lemon zest, the sugar, the 3 eggs, the half a cup of oil or so, the flour, a little bit of salt in there in the flour, and then also the lemon extract is in here, and the baking powder, not baking soda, baking powder, sour cream, and this is powdered sugar for the icing. This is your bundt pan. And we are going to actually butter the bundt pan and flour it. And then also off to the side is also the lemon juice. Over in that right corner is the lemon juice from the 3 lemons. So we're just going to have all these ingredients kind of set out just so you can kind of see what's in it. You want to use full fat sour cream, not the non-fat kind. And it's about a half a cup or so of that lemon juice from the 3 lemons, but we may not need quite all of it. So once your batter is mixed, you're just going to put it into that bundt pan. Or if you're going to use a loaf pan, just make sure that you use either a big enough loaf pan or multiple loaf pans if they're smaller, so that it fits. Loaf pans are going to take, if they're smaller, a little bit less time to cook. If they're larger, they might even take more time to cook than the bundt pan, just because the bundt pan does have this middle ring in it, and that hole in the middle is going to get heat up through the middle of the pan as well as around the outside. So this is what your pound cake looks like when it's ready to go in the oven. And again, I just used regular butter to grease the pan, and then also flour. You just kind of shake the flour around and then kind of turn it upside down and knock the remainder out, any excess out. So that's how I greased this pan and floured it, so the cake will release nicely when it's done cooking. So we're just going to put it in the oven at 350. So while I actually cook, I like to sip something. I've been trying this bubbly soda. Well, it's not really soda, it's sparkling water, but I don't know, it's pretty good. This is the cranberry bubbly, so that's why that's there. To do the frosting or the icing part, I just have like a bunch of powdered sugar here, and typically I would put like some butter in, and then some vanilla, and then other flavors. But this is not really a buttercream type icing. This is just going to be a glaze. So I'm just using here the fresh juiced lemons, those 3 lemons. And I like to just use straight lemon juice, again, because it's going to give a lot more flavor to that icing than just using like a lemon extract or something like that. So you want to just make sure that as you stir, you watch and see the consistency of it. You don't want it to get too thick, because you're not frosting cookies. You are just frosting over this warm cake. So that's too thick, so we're going to want to add a little bit more. And you're not going to probably use all of the juice of the 3 lemons. So this is kind of how you want it to be by the time you have completed adding the lemon juice. You want it to be thick, but not too thick. You don't want it to be as thick as like a buttercream, and you also don't want it to be too thin, like definitely not as thin as like a ham glaze or something. Okay, so that is going to be our icing, and I'm going to actually cover it with saran wrap all the way pressed down on top of it, because that will keep it from developing any kind of a skin while that cake is baking. So yeah, I like to mix my lemon glaze with just a spoon. I'm sure you can use an electric mixer. That works too. It's pretty tasty. But I just don't like the amount of time and cleanup it requires to use an electric mixer. So that's why I mix my glaze with a spoon. So what I'm going to do is just get a little, by the way, so I have a little bit of the lemon juice left over, which is fine. You're not going to use all of the juice of those 3 lemons. In fact, I'm probably going to just, like, it is really good to just add it into sparkling water or whatever. So lemon juice is pretty handy for flavoring things. Franklin was wrapping his arm with with a packet of frozen vegetables and then saran wrap around and around and around because he had hurt his arm at football practice. So it was hard to get that saran wrap started because it was all torn weird at the end, because, you know, teenagers are just going to do things as quick as possible. So what I'm going to do is take my hand and just press down on that so that it covers and seals all the way around that. And I'll just leave the icing out and wait for that pound cake to finish cooking. And once the pound cake is baked, then we will remove it from the oven, let it cool a little bit, and then we will glaze it with the lemon glaze one time, let that set, and then glaze it again, because you want the first coat of the glaze to just kind of soak in to the cake itself when it's hot, but then you want the rest of the icing to kind of sit on top a little bit. So I started smelling the cake, smelling done at about 30 minutes. Actually, I set the timer for 45 minutes because I thought it would be about 45 minutes, but the true way to tell is if you just put in a toothpick and pull it out, and if that toothpick is clean, then it is done. If there's stuff clinging to it that looks wet, then it's not done. So this is done. You can also see that it's separated from the pan on the edges, so it's really nicely baked. And we're gonna just kind of let this set for a minute and cool, just for about 5 minutes, and then we're gonna put some of that glaze over it. So you can see how beautiful that is. After 5 minutes, I just turned that pan upside down on top of 2 cooling racks. I actually crisscrossed my cooling racks for a pound cake because a pound cake is kind of heavy and it will just sink a single cooling rack. So we're just going to go ahead and take that plastic off the top and get a little bit of that glaze. And kind of what I do is glaze this similar to a rum cake, in that I like some of the glaze to sink down into the cake while it's actually cooling, because that cake actually doesn't have any lemon juice in it. It has the nice lemon flavoring and also the lemon zest, but it doesn't actually have the lemon juice. The lemon juice is actually in this glaze. So what I'm going to do is do kind of like a starter glaze at first, and then we're going to do a second glaze after this one. So we're going to kind of double layer the glaze, because nothing is better than this amazing lemon juice and powdered sugar. Really simple, really easy to make, but it's just such a great combination because it's so acidic, it's so tart, mixed with so sweet, the powdered sugar. It just makes it really great. Okay, so we've gone one time over, and we're going to now do a second round of the glaze. And because this cake is still warm, that first layer is really going to sink into the cake, and the second layer is going to kind of add a little bit of more of like a frosting type thickness on top. So 2 layers. You're not going to use all of the icing. Some things that you can kind of use your icing for afterward are any kind of pastries. You can put a little bit of this lemon glaze on. You can actually just put it inside of something that requires sugar, like pancakes or waffles or anything like that. You can, you know, just put it on buttered toast if you want, or drizzle some over some blueberries for a little fresh kind of berry dessert. So basically you're just going to keep kind of layering that glaze until you have a nice kind of almost solid look to the top layer. And you want to just kind of spread it so that it's, you know, nice and even. So that's beautiful. And some of it will be dripping down off the sides onto the countertop, which is fine. Because it's warm, you know, I don't even mind that, because honestly, if it sets in some of the glaze even from the bottom, it will get a little bit of that lemon flavor kind of all around. So this is your finished lemon pound cake. And what we're going to do next is just let it cool completely before we slice it. So it's going to take it a little bit to cool. You want it to cool completely, because if you try and slice it warm, although it's pretty delicious warm, it's going to kind of wrinkle up the crumb. So it's just going to kind of bunch up the crumb when you slice it, if you slice it too soon. So we're just going to let it cool off completely, maybe 30 minutes or so, maybe a full hour. We'll just kind of come and feel around it. You can feel if heat is still emanating off of it or if it's cool. So this is what it should look like from the top after you've finished with the icing. It should just look like a giant Krispy Kreme donut, honestly, is the best way I can explain it. Only with a little bit thicker icing than a Krispy Kreme. But yeah, so you can see that glaze is just dripping down underneath. So this is what it looks like when it's cooled and sliced, and it's just so smooth and rich and creamy on the inside, and that crumb is just perfectly smooth. It's not, you know, undone. It's also not overdone. It's just so delicious. So this is your finished lemon pound cake. And you can see that it's just so soft and moist. There's nothing dry about that at all. So delicious. There's a lot of lemon just in the cake itself, but also tons of lemon in the icing too. So it's just a really amazing and delicious dessert, and it's not all bad for you. There are those 3 eggs and that large amount of sour cream, so there's protein in here as well as, of course, sugar. So cut yourself a slice and enjoy your evening with your favorite beverage, whether it's coffee or black tea or green tea. It's just such a delicious dessert, and also makes a great breakfast too, honestly. So who doesn't love dessert for breakfast? So I hope you enjoyed this recipe, and let me know if you think that putting all the ingredients in containers at the beginning actually helps you see more of an approximation of my measurements. I will someday have to go purchase measuring cups just so that I have them and can show you a more exact measurement of things. But I hope that's good enough for this time, and happy baking.